Welcome back to Awaken Stories and To This Explainer. Last time, we talked about the king who was right but completely alone. Well, today's story comes from the opposite angle. It's about a man who thought he knew better than the conditions he was given. It involves God, a farmer, a very bold deal, and a harvest that goes completely, devastatingly wrong, despite being literally perfect. We're drawing today from one of Osho's teaching stories, specifically from his talks on Sufi stories called The Perfect Master. And while it starts as a simple agricultural fable, by the end, it holds a mirror directly up to a massive trap in our modern lives.
So imagine this for a second. What would happen if you could just control the weather for exactly 1 year? Think about having absolute, completely frictionless control over your environment. Like, you just flip a switch and boom, every single annoyance, every delay, every tiny difficulty in your day-to-day life is just gone. Sounds like an absolute dream, doesn't it? Well, that exact desire is the engine for the parable we're diving into today.
Our story starts off pretty gently, with a kind of humorous premise. God used to actually live right here on Earth. But, there was a problem. He was getting completely exhausted by us humans. People were just constantly pestering him from every possible direction with contradictory prayers about how to run the weather. You've got one person begging for rain for their crops, and then literally right next door their neighbor is praying for sunshine for a wedding. It was this endless comedy of conflicting demands with every single person totally convinced they knew exactly what conditions were best.
Now, out of all these complaining voices, there was one farmer who was way more persistent and honestly way more arrogant than the rest. He marches right up to God with this super bold proposition. He basically says, look, you're doing it all wrong. Give me just 1 year. Let me control the conditions, and I will show you what a real harvest looks like. This guy is completely 100% convinced that his mind knows better than the natural rhythm of life itself.
And surprise, surprise, God actually agrees to the experiment. He just hands over the ultimate weather controls to the farmer for a full year. So the deal is struck. The farmer gets exactly what he asked for, becoming the absolute master of his own environment.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how the farmer goes about engineering his little utopia. He deliberately removes every single element of resistance, the whole shebang. He orders up the perfect, gentle sun. He programs perfectly timed rain. But the crucial part is what he takes out. Absolutely no storms, zero wind, and not a single morning of frost. He totally eliminates anything that could cause even the slightest bit of stress to his crops.
Unsurprisingly, under these absolutely perfect, completely frictionless conditions, the crops respond exactly as he calculated. They just flourish immediately. Without any struggle, without being battered by the wind or the rain, the wheat grows beautifully tall, vibrant green, and perfectly straight. The farmer's looking out at his fields, probably feeling incredibly smug, thinking he has officially outsmarted God and nature. But then, harvest time arrives, and we hit a devastating twist. While the outside of the stalks are just towering and beautiful, opening them up reveals a pretty grim reality. They are completely hollow on the inside, like completely empty. There is not a single grain of wheat to be found anywhere. It's an entirely empty harvest.
So obviously in a total panic, the farmer asks God what went wrong. And God explains the basic biological reality of those missing ingredients. See, because there was no wind, the plant never actually had to force its roots to grip the soil. Because there was no storm, the stalk never had to build up any structural strength. Without any struggle, without any challenge, the plant had absolutely no reason to fight for its life. The pressure to survive is exactly what creates the grain. Without that pressure, you get all the height, but absolutely zero depth.
So the really crucial point here is that this isn't just some neat little agricultural fable from Osho. It acts as a direct mirror. It has an almost painfully direct application to how we live our lives right now. The trap that the farmer fell into? It's the exact same trap we fall into every single day in the modern world. We suffer heavily from what we can call the optimization mindset. It's this continuous, almost obsessive attempt to remove all the friction, all the difficulty, and all the resistance from our lives and our work. We engineer our apps, our careers, our routines to be perfectly smooth. We genuinely believe that a frictionless existence is the ultimate goal. Without even realizing it, we are all playing the role of that farmer, trying to control the weather.
And this brilliantly illustrates how we see these hollow harvests everywhere today. Just think about it. Think of startups that get massive amounts of funding right up front. With absolutely no financial pressure, they never build a sustainable business model, and eventually they just collapse. Or think of relationships where both people avoid conflict at all costs to keep the peace. Sure, they look perfect from the outside, but they completely lack true intimacy and depth. Or even consider a meditation practice done in a perfectly quiet, isolated room, one that completely falls apart the second that person has to deal with real-world traffic or stress.
But wait, we need to establish a critical boundary condition here. When we look at this teaching, we really have to push on its limits. Is Osho actually saying that all suffering is inherently good? Are we supposed to just stop trying to improve our living conditions or stop trying to put an end to pain? Because that doesn't sound right.
The answer is definitely no. But there is a precise, super vital distinction we need to make here. On one hand, you have unnecessary suffering. This is pointless damage, toxicity, or abuse that actively prevents you from flourishing. You should absolutely try to fix or remove that. But on the exact opposite hand, we have productive friction. This is the necessary tension required for actual growth. It's the difficult conversation you've been putting off, the creative block you have to push through, the physical exertion of a workout. This is the wind that forces your roots to grip deeper. We only really get into trouble when we try to eliminate that productive friction right along with the unnecessary suffering.
Ultimately, both the farmer in the story and us in the modern world fall into the exact same trap, the illusion of the mind thinking it knows better than life. We assume we know exactly what conditions are required for us to succeed, and we falsely assume that zero resistance is the only correct answer. We completely forget that the very conditions we are fighting against might be the exact things trying to feed us.
This realization really forces a massive perspective shift. It asks us to deeply rethink what we are optimizing our lives toward. We have to look honestly at what we are secretly or openly praying to eliminate. Are we trying to curate a life with absolutely no storms? Because if we actually succeed in getting exactly what we want, we might end up entirely hollowed out.
So we arrive at a completely new way to operate. Instead of wishing for the wind, the rain, and the challenges to just vanish, we must recognize that those exact forces are what create our substance. Don't pray for the storm to go away, pray for the roots to go deep enough to hold. Everything is needed, you see. Just sun and sun every single day simply won't do.
I want to leave you with this final, kind of provocative thought to consider today. Look at the difficulty, the friction, or the annoyance you are currently facing right now. The thing you're actively trying to engineer out of your life. Ask yourself, what if that specific resistance is the very thing creating your depth? What difficulty have you been praying to remove that might actually be filling your grain? Think about that for a bit. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. Until next time, let the wind come.